So here are the muscles of the trunk that you should be familiar with. Starting off with the rectus abdominis, which is not shown here. There we go. Our rectus abdominis. Now the rectus abdominis is responsible for trunk flexion. So what I want you to think about when you think about trunk flexion is putting your hand on your xiphoid process and on your belt buckle and just bringing the distance between those two hands shorter and shorter and shorter. Bringing the distance between a hand on your xiphoid process, the bottom part of your sternum here, right here, and your belt buckle. And as you crunch down, notice that you're not flexing at the hips, but instead you're flexing at the vertebrae, the lumbar vertebrae. Right, so your rectus abdominis here are responsible for trunk flexion. All right, so let's go back and let's do now trunk. Let's go back to do trunk extension. And there are three muscles back here that are so somewhat fused together that we are going to collectively call them the erector spinae group. Okay, that includes the iliopsoas, longissimus thoracic, and then some spinalis muscles as well. But these three are our major erector, our spinal erectors, which means that they are going to be performing this motion coming from this flexed position to now an extended position, upright position. Now in performing exercises, we do not want to go into hyperextension. If we do, then we can exaggerate this lumbar curvature, this lordotic curve here, and potentially injure ourselves by putting too much pressure on the posterior aspects of the discs. And so it's contraindicated to go back into hyperextension when performing exercise. A lot of people mess that up in the gym. They end up doing hyperextension instead of just going to that position right there. All right, so next up we have the action in a different plane, and that's going to be formed by this muscle called the quadratus, because it's square-shaped somewhat, and it's called the quadratus lumborum because it's in the lumbar region. Okay, this is the lumbar vertebrae, square-shaped muscle in that region, quadratus lumborum. So this muscle is responsible for our lateral trunk flexion. Lateral trunk flexion, you can see it here. Take off, fade that, and fade our internal oblique as well. Let's zoom out. You get the gist of it. It's lateral trunk flexion. And even more so, this muscle is responsible for lifting our hip up as we take a step. As we are climbing the stairs, for instance, if you notice, somebody's hips will actually teeter-totter back up and down as they walk up the stairs. And what's causing that to teeter-totter is that quadratus lumborum is being recruited at the same time as the contralateral glutes and quads and hamstrings that will be involved in the support leg as you climb the stairs. So this is the quadratus lumborum. Some exercises like a dumbbell side raise or lateral raises, a lot of people call them, are used to recruit this muscle here. So if you're bending over that way, we are actually lengthening the QL on the contralateral side, the far side, and then from that extended position, we can then go into flexion. So that's a typical way in which you would exercise this muscle, but it's also important to stretch this muscle as well by perhaps doing a walking forward lunge with an overhead reach, kicking the hips out to the side with that overhead reach. All right, so then what do we have left? We have our obliques. Okay, so let's put back our obliques. Go reset our name here. All right, so we have these external obliques, and notice how these external obliques run, coming down and in as you're going lateral to medial, down and in. And you can think about it as putting your hands into a hoodie. Your hands would go down and into the pockets of a hoodie, and you wear a hoodie on the outside of the rest of your clothes, and so you can say that the external obliques is synonymous with wearing a hoodie externally, and your hands go down and in. I don't know, maybe that'll help, maybe it won't. But these external obliques are going to help us in performing trunk rotation. Performing trunk rotation just like so. Now, because these fibers run down and in, that really is only helping us go in this direction, okay, on a bit of an angle. So it's important that we also have fibers going down or up and in as well. So just in the opposite, so forming somewhat of a crisscross. And so let's hide these, and we can see that the internal obliques do just that. They tend to rise upwards, at least in the majority of the lumbar in the trunk region. They also will go completely transverse right across once you get into the pelvic region. But these, think about these as going upwards and opposing. Think about this. If we fade it, notice how we now have fibers going in this direction and then also in this direction. That is unique, and this allows us to turn directly laterally or rotate directly in a true transverse plane, but also will allow us to rotate in various directions as we do axe chops, going upwards and downwards and in every plane in between. All right. Next up, we have the inner unit. The inner unit. And so the inner unit, if I start peeling these muscles off, inner unit acts as our body's internal weight belt. The internal weight belt. So how does a weight belt work? A weight belt will simply increase your intra-abdominal pressure, and by doing so, you will end up stabilizing the spine. Stabilizing the spine. So by increasing our intra-abdominal pressure, we stabilize the spine. Well, we have an internal weight belt, and that is led by a series of muscles, namely the transverse abdominis. Now, this is called the transverse abdominis, obviously, because the fibers here are running transversely. And what this does is it draws back. Okay, so it's going to actually draw the belly button back towards the spine, and by doing so, that'll increase the pressure inside the abdomen and stabilize the spine behind it. Now, it can't act alone. There are plenty of other muscles involved in here, including multifidus back underneath this latissimus dorsi, the pelvic floor, the bottom part called the crural diaphragm, bottom part of the diaphragm right here, among others. But think about the transverse abdominis as being extremely important for our trunk stability. Now, anytime we do a cross joint lift that takes ground reaction forces and causes us to transfer those forces all the way from our legs through our trunk and then through our shoulders and arms. Say if we're throwing a medicine ball or we're doing a clean or a push press in the gym, we need to have a strong trunk in order to do so. Otherwise, a lot of that energy is going to be dissipated across all of those different joints in the vertebrae, across all of these different joints. So, transverse abdominis, very, very important. Performing exercises like draw-ins or planks will help strengthen your transverse abdominis. Since a lot of people have weak transverse abdominis and weak inner units, due to sitting all day.